You want me to go back with you to Africa? Chris's voice trembled. Yes, Chris. Claire couldn't take it anymore. She threw her face in her hands and started to sob. She felt like her heart was ripped out and stomped on. She never fought. Never she forgot about her fought and decided to sob harder. He can't leave, Jill roared. He has a life here. I'm his fiancée. She threw the diamond ring in Sheva's face. He's not leaving for you, and definitely not for a bastard child. Sheva's eyes narrowed, her brow blazing with fury. She clenched her fist. She tried to sound as calm as possible. You take that back right now. Why don't you even know he's the father? Jill sneered. Jill, stop it, Chris pleaded. I know damn well Chris is the father, Jill, and I will repeat this. I am not trying to steal Chris. I want him to come back with me to Africa so he can see his daughter. Really? You sure? Because you probably opened your legs plenty of time for your little gorilla caretakers. That's it. Sheva launched. Hot tears ran down her face. Her nails clawed at Jill's face. She grimaced and pulled her hair up. Sheva slapped her across the face and Jill punched her in the stomach, causing Sheva to gasp and crush to the ground. Jill jumped on top of her and started hitting. Sheva threw her hands up to block the blows. Claire started screaming for them to stop, and Chris sprinted over to break them up. He ripped Jill off of Sheva. Sheva slowly stood up and blood dripped down her cheek. Chris took Jill to drag her out of the room. A tear-stained Claire sprinted over to Sheva's side. Sheva, are you okay? Sheva put a hand to her wound. Blood pooled into her fingers and dripped onto the floor. She stared at the two red stains that polluted the white carpet. She was the blood that ruined Chris's perfect snow-white world. She destroyed her relationship with Claire, who she loved dearly. All she wanted to do was bring Amelia back her father, but instead she only brought two people she loved pain. Sheva. She slowly glanced up. More tears spilled down her face. Claire, I'm sorry. I should have told you a long time ago. I just love you so much and I didn't want to hurt you. Well, you did, Sheva. Her voice hard. But I will always love you. But, can I ever trust you again? She sighed and sat on the couch. Sheva sat down next to her and started to play with the loose strand of her sweater. That's up to you, Claire. I love you no matter what decision you make. Suddenly, Sherry stumbled into the room. Sherry? Dude, what's with these brownies? It's pot, Jake. Jake glanced down at his wine and the green glove began to rose to the surface. He shrieked and threw the glass away from him. It shattered the wine and the weed littered the floor. You're in so much trouble, Wesker shouted. He laughed and pointed at the mess with his 20-something-year-old son made. Jake put a hand in front of his face. Whoa, wee, Wesker giggled with glee. We shouldn't have drank this eggnog. Jake snickered. Wesker stared at him. Well, what? I'm sorry, he whispered. I shouldn't have been there. Jake's eyes started to water. No, don't pull this shit on me. You asshole. Shh, Jake, Daddy's here. He pulled himself closer. No! Jake pushed him away. You made Mom cry. Jake started to sobbing. Wesker took him and hugged him. He could feel his son's body start to shake. He started to sing to him Led Zeppelin's song and stroking his son's auburn hair. Just like Jade's. He closed his eyes. I'm so sorry, he repeated over and over. What in the hell is going on here? The two looked up at Ada with a horrid expression on her face. She was still processing what she was witnessing. Leon came from behind her and his jaw dropped. Please, God, let me be seeing things. I don't think so, Leon. She spun around to face him. He flinched. He never had seen Ada with such fear in her eyes. Who would have thought that Ada Wong was afraid of parental bonding? He chuckled at the thought. She gripped his shoulders. Her eyes only filled with absolute horror. I swear, I will never go back to him. I mean it. Leon chuckled some more. Oh, Ada. He watched as the men continued to sob. The man who once tried to take over the world was now sobbing as his strange son. The man who murdered Sherry's parents. The man who was once married to his wife. The man who might be someday be able to forgive. Come on, Ada. Let's let them have their moment. He draped his arm over her shoulder. God, if I have to watch any more of this, I will vomit. He shook his head. Come on, and the two men left the room so they can continue to bond. Chris sat Jill down. He sat next to her. Jill was heaving. He was going to wait till she calmed down before he would talk. They watched snow coming down. This gave Chris some time to think. I have a daughter. I have a child who doesn't know I'm her father. Sheva had my daughter. Sheva wants me to go with her to Africa. She wants me to meet her daughter. Jill's my fiancé. We have a life together. We're going to get married. I love Jill. I love Sheva. Sheva, Jill. Chris, why didn't you tell me, Sheva? You didn't have to do this alone, Sheva. What am I to do? I'm not strong enough to love you both. I'm not strong enough to even love myself. Chris, Jill repeated. He looked over at her. Her brown hair had escaped her ponytail and spilled down her shoulders like a waterfall. Her eyes were red from crying. Her maroon dress fluttered across her knees, and her hands laid on her knees. Her bare legs trembled. Poor Jill. She must be upset about all this. He sighed, causing a puff of smoke to escape. They remained silent and watched the snow fall. Chris, I'm pregnant. He looked over at her and then back at the snow. Jill closed her eyes with such tears as spilled down her cheeks. How long? About a month? Why didn't you tell me? I thought, her voice trailed off. Jill, spit it, he demanded. I was afraid that you'd leave me. I thought that you would hate me because of the procrastinations. She cried. Jill! He paused and then continued. I love you more than and through hell and back. We've been together for so long and we've been through so much. Why? Would you think I would leave? Because I thought, Jill, I'm not going to leave you. I've been in love with you for far too long. He cupped her face, causing her heart to race. I want to be with you. I want to marry you. I want to become a better person. I don't want to see you cry anymore, Jill. I need help. I'm an alcoholic, and if I'm going to be a good father, I need to clean up my act. It's what Piers would have wanted. She put a hand over his. Her green eyes softened. What about Sheva's offer? Jill, you know I have to be there for her, too. She's my daughter. One of the first steps I need to take to become a better father is to be there for her. Yeah, you're right. God, I owe Sheva a major apology. I love you and want to spend the rest of my life with you. I do. Hey, Jill. She glanced up and laughed because right above them stood a mistletoe. He shook Jill and pulled her so they could make out a sapphire specks in his eyes. She felt the heat of his breath. This is for earlier. She felt the soft lips press. She curled her arms around, her fingers brushed through his hair. Suddenly, they were interrupted by the slam of the door. They quickly pulled away. Leon stood in the doorway with his face red and was heaving. Jill's eyes went wide. She had never seen Leon this panicked before. She stood up. Leon, what's wrong? It's Sherry. She's in labor. Breathe, Sherry, breathe. Claire gripped Sherry's hand. Sherry squeezed back hard. Claire yelped. Sherry continued to heave. Sheva stormed out of the room. Claire flashed her a panicked look, and Sheva angrily shook her head, causing Claire to scream. What do you mean they're not coming? Because of the blizzard. Damn it. Sherry screamed. Claire immediately went back to Sherry's attention. Sheva sighed and glared over at Ada and Jake, who were just standing there. Well, do something, she screamed. What? Jake shouted. Ugh, what are you, high? Jake gave her a stupid look. He opened his mouth, but Ada stopped him. Don't answer that, she harshly whispered. Sheva groaned and pointed over at Sherry. Go be with your wife. Jake curled over to be at his wife's side. He knelt down and started to stroke her golden hair. Shh, hang in there, Supergirl, you got this. Shut up, Jake, Sherry shouted. Jake jumped back, a horrid expression on his face. Sherry's eyes closed as she began to moan. Oh, Sherry, hang in there just a little while longer. Help is coming. Sherry glared at Claire. She then clenched her teeth. This baby's not gonna wah! She then threw both her hands over her bulging belly as the sofa was covered in a sun pool of water. Oh, dear God, no! Claire exclaimed. Oh shit, I'm not ready for this, Jake screamed. Sheva looked over to flash Ada a panicked look, but she was gone. She clenched her fist. Where the hell did Miss Red Riding Hood ran off to? Suddenly, Ada appeared out of nowhere with a steaming pot in her hands. Sheva jumped over her and placed a hand rapidly on her beating heart. How did she do that? She put the pot down on the nightstand next to Sherry and Claire. Jake was completely speechless because her never do that Ada Wong would never help a human being without earning any benefits. She glanced up at Sherry, whose face was beet red and scrunched up due to the pain. She gave her a weak smile. "Hang in there," she said softly, and she stood up and left the room. Suddenly Wesker entered the room. Jake's and Claire's and Sheva's dropped as he tied on the faded beige apron that he had the word BSAA badass on it with faded lettering. He was rolling up his shirt sleeves. His eyes were blazing. His mouth was in a thin line. Jake's eyes narrowed. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" He stared down at it as soon he was walking closer. "I'm the one who's going to deliver the baby." "No way in hell you're delivering my son, you..." Jake pointed an accusing finger at him. "You're not going anywhere near her." "Jake, listen to me. There's no other way," Claire whispered. "No, we'll wait till help arrives." "Jake, help is not coming," Claire cried. "The baby is coming, and he is the only one with any sort of medical experience." But he felt a weak tug. He glanced down at his wife's tear-stained eyes. "Jake, please," she whispered. "Let him help me." Jake looked away from his wife, and he stood in front of his wife, ready to protect her from sudden threat. Wesker watched his son quietly. "He is definitely not like me," he concluded. Sheva raced in with a bowl of ice chips. She sat them down on the nightstand next to the boiling water. Sheva gripped Jake and dragged him back over to his wife. She slammed the spoon into his palm. "Start feeding her these chips," she demanded. She stood back up and quietly left the room. Just after she left the room, Leon came in with a bundle of blankets and towels. Claire abruptly stood up and took them graciously. Leon bent down and gave Sherry a peck on her damp forehead. "Hang in there." Soon he walked out. Several hours later, the labor was still going on. "Come on, Cher Bear, you can do this," Claire shouted. Sherry screamed and lunged forward. Wesker wiped his brow and kept watching for when the baby. Sherry collapsed onto the pillow and was breathing heavily, her chest quickly rising and falling with each labored breath. Jake clenched in onto her hand. Fear and concern flashed across his face. He brushed away the damp strands of her face. "Come on, Supergirl, you got this," he whispered. "One more push," Wesker shouted. I can't do it. It hurts, she sobbed. "Cher Bear, you have to." "No!" She sobbed over harder as the pain spread throughout her body. "It's only one more, Supergirl. Come on," Jake begged. She lunged forward, her teeth clenched. "That's a girl. Keep going." She pushed harder. "Harder!" Wesker roared. She then let out a blood-curdling scream as she pushed. Suddenly the room filled with a loud wail. Jake looked down and felt his tears escape his eyes. It was beautiful. Ada and Leon cuddled on the couch with warmth. Sheva quietly sat in the corner, lost in her thoughts. Her eyes widened when Jill sat beside her. Hey, Sheva said quietly. "Jill, I'm so sorry." "So am I," she said softly. "What?" Jill sighed. "I can't blame you for what happened. It wasn't your fault because I kinda know what it's going to be afraid to tell him." Sheva's jaw dropped. Jill cut her off. "Yes, I am." Sheva gave her a weak smile. "Thank you, Jill." "For what?" Sheva shook her head. "Never mind, it's nothing. Just go be with Chris." She smiled and stood up. He said yes, and he walked over to him. "Thank you, Jill, for being the one to help me let him go." Jill huddled up next to Chris for warmth. Their fingers laced. They all waited and waited. The clock ticked. They kept waiting. Leon and Ada finally ended up falling asleep. Sheva's eyes were droopy and Chris huddled closer. She leaned her head on their shoulders. "It'll be like this for a few months," she whispered. "Yeah," he said, and put his hand on her stomach. She smiled and curled closer. The door finally slammed open. Everyone sat up and Jake entered the room. He was smiling, his blue eyes filled with tears. "He's finally here!" 1 year later, a large house in the suburb, in the center of the room, where a group of women were gathered around in front of the mirror laughing. "Jill, you're beautiful," Claire cried. Jill rolled her eyes. Please, it took me forever to get rid of all this baby weight. Claire giggled. Well, you look great. Jill looked in the mirror. The wedding dress she wore was beyond beauty. The dress had a low neckline that showed her chest. Upon the bare chest was a beautiful diamond necklace that were shaped as roses. The dress hugged down to her hips and flared out in dozens of flames of white. Her dark hair was pinned up, and several curls slipped gently on her neck. The veil ran down her waist, and the diamonds were laced onto its thin fabric. Jill smiled at her reflection. Today was the day. Meanwhile, Ada was standing guard outside the door. Her arms were crossed and her ruby-red lips were curled into her usual smirk. She wore a chinosangam dress that she hugged curves of her body. And of course it was her favorite color, red. Her raven hair was held up with chopsticks. Jake strolled up the stairs and he smirked when he walked right up to her. What do you want to say, Wesker Jr.? She said dryly. What did I say? About calling me that? She rolled her eyes. Oh yeah, not to call you that. Excuse me. Jake's eyes narrowed. Haha, very funny, Juan. And he stormed out down the stairs. Hey, and I told you it's Kennedy, she shouted. She spun around, and quickly she opened the door and peered through the crack. She watched Claire was helping Jill get ready. Claire's auburn hair grew in the past year. The tips touched her chin, and she wore an emerald silk dress and black heels. She proudly wore the golden locket that Sheva had gotten her for her birthday. The two women were laughing. Ada's lips curled into a smile. Better leave him be. She quietly shut the door and continued to stand aground. In a beautiful room that was lit up by dozens of beautiful paper lamps, a scarlet carpet was spread out between two pews, and dozens of Jill and Chris's friends and family were sitting. The carpet stopped at the set of stairs where above stood Chris in a dark tux and red tie. Jill stood outside the door, her heart was racing. She closed her eyes and took several deep breaths. Today's the day. She opened them and walked in. As she walked down the aisle, she noticed an Ingrid and pantsuit camera in her hand. She then saw Helena arm in arm with Parker. She waved and Jill flashed a smile. She knew Albert was sitting next to Sherry, who was holding Adam in her hands. His blonde hair was all over the place, and his deep blue eyes glowed under the lights. He giggled and threw his thumb into his mouth. She saw Claire and Leon standing beside Chris, smiles on both their faces. Ada sat in the front row, her arms were crossed as she gave her usual smirk. Then she saw Sheva. She sat there, her amber eyes glistened with tears. She felt a small tug and looked down at the beaming little girl. Her hair was pulled up into pigtails, and she had soft caramel skin like her mother and bright blue eyes like her father. She then gave a sudden giggle and looked down at the baby in Sheva's arms. Jill smiled. The baby had curly brown hair. Her blue eyes glowed with rosy cheeks. She giggled louder and pulled on Sheva's hair. The two women locked eyes, brown meat green, both bonded by their children, bonded by the same man, who loved them forever. The other found love for someone else. Both witnessed terror of bioweaponry, the horrors that caused the whole world. Both were laced by tragedy and loss. Both saved each other's lives. They were forever bonded now, a bond that will never break. Jill smiled. The lips curled into a smile. Good luck, little sister, she whispered. Jill gave her another smile and continued walking down the aisle. When she reached the stairs, Chris reached his hand out. She took it and pulled it up. The two locked gazes and smiled, and they looked at each other as the pastor spoke. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here today to bring Jillian May Valentine and Christopher Richard Redfield in holy matrimony. At home, a family, laced by tragedy and dark secrets that pull them closer together instead of further apart. And that, my pretties, was a Resident Evil Christmas. A Resident Evil, I'm gonna say, Christmas fanfiction, written by PurpleKillerPanda. So, yeah. This story was made back in 2014, so that was like a long time ago. So basically, this person hasn't uploaded any stories since 2015. So I'm going to definitely have to say that there are a lot of things that I feel that needs to be said about this. Now, one of them being, I personally like this story, but there's a few issues that I do need to address. But before I get all into the the negative side of the story, I'm basically gonna go ahead and talk about the positives. Now, for one, I do like this story a lot. I liked it where it was going, and the fact that Chris had his little Harlem group of girls, like not really a Harlem per se, but you know he basically has a daughter with Sheva and he basically has a kid with Jill. So that's actually quite interesting. So, I mean, you usually, I mean, it's quite possible that Chris Redfield could be in a polyamorous relationship between, you know, Sheva and Jill in this story, but at the same time, we really don't know because like everybody has their own creative mind on what they want to write for their stories. So, I'm not going to be the one to judge on that. But I really do like the concept of the story. I thought it was really neat and well done. It definitely helped out a whole lot. So I personally really enjoyed this story. So, I mean, the story was pretty good. I personally really enjoyed it. So I do have to say is that it is a really great concept with this story. I personally really enjoyed it. I thought, it was really neat and well done. So there's definitely that. So I personally do have to say is that I really do like this story, but there are some issues with it that I do feel that could be improved. Now, I really like this story. I mean, the fact that Sherry has a kid in this one, I mean, I thought that was pretty sweet too, Sherry has a kid and I don't even know how old Sherry is now cuz I haven't played the I haven't caught up with the Resident Evil lore in quite a while because I've been, into other fandoms. And boy, my throat was dry while I was reading the last few chapters that I had to take, certain drinks of Pepsi. So, yeah. I definitely do have to say the ending of Jill getting married to Chris, I really do thought that was a really good way to end the story, even though it didn't have anything much to do with Christmas. But it was definitely a pretty good story. I personally really enjoyed this a whole lot. So, I definitely do have to say, I'll leave a link in description. So if you guys want to go check out this story, you're more than welcome to check it out if you want. Now, I'm going to talk about the negatives or the stuff that I had issues with the story. Now, first of all, I am going to sit here and say, while I do like Wesker trying to make amends, I can't really see him making amends like that. I honestly can't see him making amends like that because, I know who Wesker really is. But like I said, I mean, if the person, tries to, change the character a little bit, but, Wesker kind of acts out of character in this story, but like I said, I mean, he's not the one to, forgive people. That's another thing I want to point it out in case if anybody is curious about, what Wesker's character is like. But if you guys have played the Resident Evil games or watch gameplay or know the lore and story, Wesker isn't really the type to forgive people. I mean, the fact that Jake is, Wesker's son, I obviously can say is that it obviously makes me wonder. I mean, that's kind of a fury that is he's actually um yeah, he is the son of, Albert Wesker. I just looked it up. I mean, I haven't really caught up with Resident Evil, stuff in a while, but that's something I did not even know. And I definitely do have to say is Sherry in this story, I think she did pretty good in this story. I really do know that she was a young kid in the earlier Resident Evil games, but I think when I think she gets older, I think Resident Evil 6 she's like an adult or something like that. I think that's what happens. But yeah, I mean, I haven't really played, some Resident Evil games, so I don't really know. But maybe if you guys have played Resident Evil games and maybe know the lore a little more, you guys can let me know in the comments below. Another thing I do have to say was that there were punctuation errors throughout this story. Now, this story was readable most of the time, but there were parts of it that was really difficult for me to read. That is, something I definitely need to point out, that there were grammatical errors in this story. There were spelling errors I did notice in the story, so I can understand, the person, probably, was younger and didn't know how to write pretty good or something like that. But yeah, there were a lot of spelling errors and there were a lot of grammatical errors in this story. But I mean, the story was still readable, but there were parts of it that was really hard for me to read. I mean, to be fair, I'm not trying to harp on this person or anything like that, but I definitely do feel that this story does need some improvement on that. I mean, I know it's an older story, so maybe the person probably didn't understand or know how to, do better at the time, but I mean, I hope that they're doing better in story writing wherever they're at, because I know they're not active on here anymore. So, well, not active here, but like active on um well, yeah, active on fanfiction.net. I cannot even talk today. I don't even know why. But yeah. I definitely do have to say is that this has actually been pretty interesting and stuff. So I definitely do have to really say that it's a pretty good story. Now, I personally really enjoy that. I personally really thought this was really an enjoyable story, but despite the few issues that I did have with this story, that I did explain what I had issues with on what the story I had issues with, but I definitely do have to really sit here and say is that I do want to point out that, to fix grammatical errors, punctuation errors, and even spelling errors, I would suggest the offer to use Google Docs, because Google Docs is what I use for my stories, and I've been using it for a couple years. So I've been doing pretty good with that. But yeah, I suggest the offer, to before posting their work, to check their, for spelling errors, punctuation errors, grammatical errors, and stuff like that. Just so then that way they get the they get the idea of, whatever issues there is in their story, and so they can fix it before they post it. I mean, that's just my suggestion and advice to anybody who's writing stories and have spelling errors. And here's the thing, I do suck at spelling too. Like, I mean, I'm not perfect when it comes to spelling. Sometimes I have to look certain words up or something, and then I get the actual word when the search comes up, if there's a story not story, but if there's a word that I have a hard time understanding. So there's that. I mean, the story was still readable. I still really enjoyed it, but despite the grammatical errors, punctuation errors, and, spelling errors, the grammar was most of the grammar was all right. I definitely do have to say, but it does need to be fixed up. That I definitely do need to say is the grammar needs to be fixed up, the punctuation errors need to be fixed up, and the spelling errors do need to be fixed up as well. So it's my best advice I can give to the offer for this story. Now, I will leave a link in the description in case if you guys want to go check out this story if you haven't. So, anyways, I guess with that being said, like I'm always going to say, this is just simply my own personal opinion, and if you happen to disagree with it, that's perfectly fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions in regards to these stories, and this is just simply my own personal thoughts. I'm going to give this story a 7 out of 10. I'm giving that a 7 out of 10 because while I do like the concept of the story, I do like, the plot line in that, and it's pretty good. But the issues I do have is one of them being, Wesker's acting out of character. He's not really the type to be sitting there and um you know forgiving, making amends in that, and I can't see him do that. And another thing I do have to say is that there were a lot of grammatical errors, spelling errors, and punctuation errors. So part of the story was pretty hard for me to read. And yeah, I kind of stuttered a lot because of the fact that there were all those issues that were in the story that really didn't help. But yeah, that's why it's getting a 7 out of 10. Now, I do wish that maybe the author could put it through Google Docs and check the spelling errors and grammatical errors, and then that way that would really help out with the story, if that, help out with the readers like me. But anyways, what did you guys personally think of this story? Did you all enjoy it? Did you all not? Also, what would you have done in person to help make this story a lot better? Feel free to let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section down below. I'm Shadow the Lion Queen. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and if you're new to my channel, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Ring the bell for notifications to when I upload, so that way you guys will not miss an upload. As always, if you guys want to go follow me on Blue Sky, follow me on Twitter, follow me on DeviantArt, and follow me on my backup channel known as Mr. Darkshigo, as links to those will be in the About page section, so you guys will not miss an upload. And that's pretty much all I have to really say, but if I'm missing something, please let me know. And as always, I will catch you guys all in the next video. Peace out, and like always, roll the outro because I'm out.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload, so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Ms. Darkshigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please stay pretty.